So thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me. This is my first time at SOAP. I want to thank the organizers to putting faith in me, right? And actually, I agree with everything which my predecessor said, and I'm the person to blame. And I will tell you why in a second. So we'll talk about place for a content in a modern product. I specifically crossed out technical content because the content is much more than that. I will try to present that to you through my eyes, right? I am, well, the person to blame, and that person to blame is a product manager, right? So I've been in technology for the last 20 years, usually on the engineering, architecture side, management side, and recent years, mainly product management. So I usually tell people that they don't have time and I need something now, right? And if they don't do it, then I am very, very angry. A couple of disclaimers before we start. First of all, those are my own thoughts, right? So, and they cannot be associated with any of my current or former employers. And I'm sorry that I need to do this, but this is basically the way how the world works today. All right, so let's move on. Let's start with something easy. A product manager tries to walk into the bar, but he can't. Because the door isn't scheduled until the next release. Product managers would understand that. Unfortunately, I've been there, and I did made a couple of mistakes, like for example, implementing or asking for implementation of a very nice feature and then forgetting to put the link into the toolbar. And then actually facing the customer directly on that. I think it's also important to note that recent couple of years actually changed our way of thinking, and they will continue to change the way how everybody works. And it's even more important to understand basically where we are with the content, what are the other people thinking about the content, and the fact that we need to change that, right? Because even though the lockdown, the pandemic is over, we will still change the way how we interact with the world. All right, so a thesis for our discussion today is a great product is a function of end-to-end user experience. And it's important to note that the user experience is not a bunch of people designing a couple of UIs or how the product looks. Actually, they are designing everything. So end-to-end is everything from the moment that the customer sees the product for the first time up to the point when the product is finally, I don't know, disposed, right? Nobody needs to use it anymore. That's the end-to-end experience. And that experience is definitely much more than looks, than basically what the product does, and how that operations, how that main kind of a use is done. And it's definitely much more than graphics. So what is great end-to-end user experience? Well, we can slice it and dice it in many ways. But I would say from the product management perspective, remember that I am always saying this from the product perspective, starts with the concept, then there is some solution that realizes this concept, then there is a delivery, right? So somehow the customer needs to get that product. And then the last important factor, which I actually struggled to call it with one word, but it's satisfaction. Effectively, the great user experience comes from the satisfaction of the user, the customer. If that's not there, then you can have best concept, best idea ever, best technology, best development team, anything like this, and it will not go. I'm sorry, but this is the fact. And market is full of great products like this, which didn't sell, right? So this is basically it. So this is something that we will explore, and I want you to wonder where would you put the content in this, right? What's the right place to kind of put and do the content, include the content, what that content is, and basically how we will how this whole thing should work. And I don't know if this is coincidence to what Raquel was saying, but basically she was right? Talking about operations. If that operations are not aligned, then that content is not where it's supposed to be, right? And it does not contribute to great end-to-end user experience. All right, so let's kind of dive a little bit deeper. So concept can be kind of translated to a couple of more, or kind of decomposed to a couple of more things, like idea, vision, strategy. That's usually where the product manager lives, and most of the product managers will tell you, that's it, that's my job, that's done, strategy is there, read the document and do the work, right? That's basically how it usually goes. Then there is a solution, right? Comes from design, technology, implementation, quality. Quality is quite important, also kind of a topic for a different presentation. But this is basically usually where the production happens, when the people kind of implement, design, build, produce, right? Whatever depending what the product actually is. And then once the product is ready, then there is a delivery phase, right? So somebody needs to deploy the product, right? The product needs to be shipped to the market, right? To the customers. It needs to be enabled, right? If this is an online access, there needs to be this kind of a step of introducing the product to the world. Introduction to the product is anything related to the process of marketing or process of kind of advertising, the process of getting the customer interested with your product. It's a very important phase because lots of products, like I said, failed on that phase, right? They were great beneath, but they were not that great if we are talking about the actual way how the product was introduced to the market. And then there is a learning and training. We'll talk about this in a second a little bit more, but the main thing is that with every new product, there is a phase that you need to understand basically what that product is capable of, how this product works. Especially the more and more kind of a complex products require more time to get used to it. Well, even in some cases, the people who buy those products, who use those products, are not even aware of all its potential throughout its life cycle, right? So that's also something that is important. If it's missed in the beginning, later on, it's very difficult to change that. And then the satisfaction. And satisfaction is basically the whole kind of a period of time where the product is in active use, right? Can be anything, car, remote control, I don't know, smartphone, whatever, right? Software as well. And this is basically where the product is used, right? How I use it, whether it's efficient, whether it meets my expectations as a customer, and basically how I see this product, how I shape it. If I'm happy, I will pass it to my friends, I will pass it to my colleagues, to other businesses. If I'm not happy, I will be, well, maybe I will give a constructive feedback, but usually I will just kind of complain that something is not working, right? And then there comes support and maintenance, right? The support and maintenance is important to remediate any kind of issues related to problems during the use, the issues that arise. And that's basically it. Now, that's a kind of like a house. You build it ground up. There is and hopefully by the end, you have a house where you can live. You have the great product. You have the great user experience, end-to-end user experience, right? So this is basically where it goes. Who can tell me what the product manager does? Backlog, usually. So Conscious product manager or conscious product management, that's basically ability to understand the world of customers, right? Basically the market, all the constraints, all the things that shape how this product will be built, and try to translate this into some form of a strategy that will be later on kind of passed on to other teams, and where that product manager will kind of try to implement on his side from the market perspective, from this kind of a perspective of delivering something to the customer. At least that's the traditional thinking. Definitely the conscious product manager will not focus only on the business aspects and the time aspects. If that's the case, okay, it will, then the guy is a product owner, probably, not that much a product manager. But there needs to be some form of an understanding and putting yourself in the shoes of the potential customer and user to just basically make sure that the product that will eventually arise from all that work will be useful. And there are lots of dimensions that define basically this space, right? So it can be legal, it can be operational, right? As we heard before, right? So how do you actually do it, right? What are the target customers? What are the expectations? Basically, lots and lots of things to consider that needs to be actually answered, right? And if they are not answered in the right time, then basically you can expect as a team or as a product manager, you can expect that later on there will be problems. They will arise very quickly at the delivery time, or even production, or they will arise at the use time and support and maintenance, right? So that's basically what the product manager should do. Should understand very well and analytically try to understand basically what that product is, how it will live in the market, who will use it and how. Obviously, there are lots of intuitive product managers, right? So they don't really do analysis, they don't really look for data, they don't do research, they just invent, right? They are very creative. That also works. But it happens rarely that those products are, that this process is repeatable, right? Because that's the thing of intuition. All right, so little bit about how this whole space evolved, just to kind of jump into what to do today, right? So 2010 to 10 years ago, I call it the medieval times, right? Because this was like dark ages. And those dark ages basically meant waterfall, right? Waterfall was dark ages, right? There was a king who sent his army, and 5 years later they win the kingdom or the battle or not, right? Maybe they got lost on the way, they produced something. They went to invade a different kingdom altogether. Project management driven. This is, by the way, project management is okay. I mean, the problem is if there is no balance. If something is heavy, very heavy only on one side, then that will fail, right? So project management driven, long projects, long breakdowns, plans for 2 years ahead, that does not work, especially in the technology space. There are areas, to be fair, where this is necessary, right? Because of the process, because of the potential problems that may arise. But that's a different story and also a topic for a different presentation. So what did the project managers look like? And that was my first, by the way, I wasn't project manager there, but that was my first interactions with the product managers ever. We'll deal with this once the product is ready, right? Content, training. Once it's done, we'll think how the users will actually interact with this. Let's ask engineering to do it, because actually I don't even know that there is a content team in my organization. I never seen them. They are somewhere in the basement or right? So unfortunately, that's the case. And engineering was like, what do they want from me? I didn't know that they even exist, right? And definitely one thing, remember, waterfall, tight plans, I have completely no time for it, right? Anything I do right now, extra will cause everything else to fall, right? So that was the problem. Sorry. And the content was also kind of a different, right? Especially in the technology-based products. Hard copies, usually paper. I still have boxes of this stuff in my basement just for my personal commercial use, right? Or like end user. But they were also heavily non-interactive because they were always produced at the very end. It was too late at this time to make it interactive because the product was ready. So how do you make it interactive? Mainly around user manuals and the legal kind of forms of documentation and descriptive. And that was the majority and the bulk of the products on the market, especially technology space. So just to give you a quick anecdote, I was an engineer. I was sent to the customer after the upgrade of the very big telecommunications systems. They allowed us to visit the so-called master site, right? So basically the central point of the system. And it happened that at the same time, the shipping company came with a truck and delivered the documentation. This is not a joke. They had a special room for documentation full of boxes, right, from all the previous 5 versions of the system that they had. And they got just the latest updated version. So everything printed out, couple of boxes, and that's basically how it looked like. 5 years later, was the same case, but this time stacks of CDs or DVDs, right? So again, the same room, the same place, locked, do not open because things may fall on top of your head. All right, so 20 to 10 years, those orange kind of boxes basically where content was considered, right? So there is a whole process, whole cycle there, lots of phases, but actually those were the areas where even somebody started thinking, right? Some people started to get a little bit more conscious, some people started to think a little bit about how to improve things, but unfortunately that was the majority of the cases. 10 to 5 years ago, Renaissance. Agile begins. Agile means we don't know what we are doing, we don't have a strategy, the product manager went for a vacation, so let's do this iteratively, right? We'll come up with this as we go forward, right? So that was the Agile in the very beginnings, at least for the companies who moved from Waterfall to Agile, that was the case. And also, hey, we did that in Waterfall, let's call it an Agile name, and we'll just do the same thing, right? So that was also the case. UI, UX, I think this is the first time, and I've been with a couple of companies around that time, either as an employer or as a consultant, employee or a consultant. There was the UI, UX team started to come up and be more visible, right? So they were starting to be more visible in especially in the early phases of this one. That also, the agile kind of aspects of it, the fact that it has to be iterative, caused also the so-called cross-functional thinking. Cross-functional thinking means that you need to have a couple of different functions to do some part of the work, right? So it's not now 5 years later downstream in the waterfall model, it's actually in the next 2 weeks or month or whatever the iteration size is. Product managers started to see a little bit more competition on the market. The market, I don't know if you have that feeling. I have that feeling personally, as well as I see it in the research and the data. The market started to be much more dynamic and faster. More products. Actually, there are now hundreds of products for every problem that you want to solve. Right? You can go to this market. You can order from China. You can order from States. from whatever shop, online shop, go to you will always find a couple of products like this. So competition started to be much more furious on the market. And also customer feedback, because of the era of connectivity, started to be much more rapid, direct. And that even kind of was more kind of even more more now it's even basically it's like everywhere. Like probably while I am speaking, somebody is criticizing my words and probably building a whole blog about this. So I'm sure that this is happening. But also that was the time when the product managers started to be closer to the teams. So also they got a little bit of this kind of a introduction to the cross-functional thinking. They had to. They didn't have any choice, right? Because they were constantly asked. Now they couldn't go to the vacation. They had to actually be in the office and answer the questions. Engineering, more specialization, because there were more frameworks, more tools, more technologies. Suddenly, not everything is written in C++ or C. Now we have JavaScript, Go, Ruby, and 100 other frameworks which basically do the same thing. But that was the case. Also, specialization on the different layers, right? Front-end developers, back-end developers, full-stack engineers. So also cross-functional thinking. And the content? Well, content also evolved. First of all, it became more interactive, more technologies, better technologies, perfect. You can now also, there was a little bit earlier, it was introduced earlier, so it could be somehow combined with the product. But still late in the process. I wouldn't say that this was, yeah, this was it. No. It wasn't, unfortunately, that's been the case. I don't know if you have also noticed that 10 to 5 years instead of receiving the full, like I don't know, 20 pages or 100 pages manual, now you only got the quick start guide, right? So a couple of pages and a CD. And I think it has something to do with the people losing ability to read, right? So, but maybe I'm wrong. All right, so where we are now, great. Actually, I should probably mark the technology as well here. So I didn't, but that's okay because it was still the beginnings. Yes, there was much more active content. The products were better described to the customers. There was a media. There was lots of things that were great, right? They were new to the customers. They loved it. They didn't need the paper kind of manuals, hard copies. They wanted to go online and check it out, right? So that was great. Enlightenment. Perfect. So Agile matures. I would say that a couple of years ago, the Agile was especially freshly or introduced into companies was not very mature, right? Just people were learning, like with everything. Also with like Agile, I would say, is also a kind of a product. You need to be trained on it. You need to understand. You need to observe. You need to have experience. If you don't, it will always cause some problems. But it matures. There is a whole domain which is called Agile, and with lots of content, training, people who are quite experienced, who know how to deal with the things. So I think this is okay. This is very nice development. But also, suddenly, the UI became UX. Now, the people were not just designing the buttons. Now they were designing how those buttons will actually work, which is great. They just forgot that the application or the product is not just buttons and great looks. It actually has to do a little bit more. But also with that, cross-functional teams emerged. And that was also interesting. And also something called product thinking started. And this is important, especially from the product manager perspective, because product managers started to be trained on Agile, because they weren't before. Actually, still, I would say 50% of product managers, they don't even know what Agile is. Maybe they know the word, they don't understand how to implement it, how to use it. They had to understand basically what drives the product, right? That the product success is not driven only by kind of a great idea, but actually hard work, and that hard work can be observed via data-driven approach, right? So kind of a somehow reaching to the customers to get more information. And again, I'm talking about the bulk, right? So remember, I'm talking about bulk of products, not every product, but because there were products that were doing this before, but most of them were like this, and also the product managers for those products. Again, evolution as expected, evolution of engineering, same thing. Again, evolution of technology, very fast growth of technology. I don't think you can find a person on the market who could give you the layout of all the potential frameworks that are there for front-end development, for content management, for everything, because there are just too many. And the content, I think the content started to be closer to engineering process. There is more awareness of the fact. There is also much more interactive solutions there, right? So somehow you had to, as a product manager, or either driven by your customers, by the market needs, or by your competitors as well, you had to somehow make your product stand out. And one of the things was, hey, that product, it looks like it's smart because it tells me where to click, right? So tips, pop-ups, walkthrough, those kind of things, right? So things started to be a little bit more interactive, but that was just a kind of a beginning. So now you can see that basically we are expanding, right? We are growing with our kind of where we can apply those things based on the technology, based on the understanding of the people who are actually dealing with this, where we can kind of put this in our kind of experience house, let's call it that way. So what's the future of the content? I think the technology growth will continue. Actually, I know that it will continue, right? So there will be a smart content. What's smart content? Smart content is basically the content which is adopting to the kind of a context of how the product is used. And again, my predecessor spoke a little bit about this, right? This is the need coming from the fact that the products become multilingual. They go to different parts of the world, the same product, but they also change the feature set. So the features are a little bit different because they need to be adopted, for example, to Arabic-speaking people, to, I don't know, to Chinese language, to European expectations, to guys from UK. That has to be, there is always some specifics that needs to be applied. Therefore, also the content which is created has to be tailored to that, and the solution, the product needs to be smart enough to handle that. AI assisted. This will either directly or indirectly happen, right? Directly means that the products will have a built-in solutions that will try to perceive what the user is doing with the product and assist in a better way, like give a tip, help with that, show some additional information. But also, there will be an AI assistance. Actually, they are already out there, right? We have a couple of very nice solutions from various companies, which will assist people with their lives, right? And the people will just ask, hey, could you give me some tips how to use that, I don't know, lawn mower, right? Or I don't know, the toaster or something. This is, I can see that happening, right? That this will be there, and that content for that AI will have to be somehow created, because AI will not magically figure out how to use the given product. Somebody will have to instruct the AI how to talk about the product, what to say, in which context, in what situation. Multi-channel. This is actually happening right now, but I think it will be going more towards the right side. Again, people are losing ability to read, so they like to listen to voice, right? So therefore, the assistants are speaking naturally right now. We are trying to simulate the most natural kind of a language of people in various languages, locales, ways. And I think this is where it will go. But again, this is just a generated voice. There is no AI right now which implies the reasoning. So somebody needs to prepare the content for that AI, whatever that is. And that kind of a delivery, that multi-channel will come in different forms. It will be still some text, it will be still some interactive features, but it also be associated content, I don't know, YouTube movies, or whatever streaming, kind of a video streaming, voice, actually something that you can call, or some kind of a support center which will actually never have a person there, and things like that. Unfortunately, legal and compliance things will still be paper, because the lawyers are just simply not ready for digital era. And users will continue losing ability to read and understand. And nothing you can do about this, right? How do I know that? I am also a teacher, so I teach high school and primary school for computer science. I am not really optimistic about this. All right, so what's the great product, great user, end-to-end user experience? I believe if your content is not everywhere, and if there is no awareness that that content actually goes from the very beginning, so from the moment that I see the advertisement, through the moment I buy something and use something for the first time, and I continue using it, up to the moment when it tells me how to dispose of a kind of my product. Recently, I had that issue. I wanted to throw out some of the electronic equipment. Went to the scrapyard actually, and they told me that they cannot take it because some of the components are not processable and nobody takes them. Right. So now I am. Imagine, I was happy with this. This was like a tablet, right? I cannot say the brand, but it was a tablet. I used it, I was happy with it. Throughout the life cycle, it broke down. I wanted to dispose it, with using all the kind of my kind of a responsible thinking about the environment. And at the very last mile, they tell me that I cannot dispose it because it contains something, right? Not a great end-to-end user experience. How to work with the product, right? So now you know that it has to be everywhere. It actually has to be everywhere. The content is everywhere. The content is pretty much everything that you can imagine. It's not limited to documentation. It's also everything that is part of the product, whether it's a prompt, whether it's a description, whether it's a marketing, anything, honestly anything. It needs to be consistent. If it's not consistent, then that great end-to-end user experience is actually not there, and it will never be there. The great products that we see, that people are happy that they are buying more, is actually coming from the consistency. Consistency and the fact that the information is when I need it and how I need it, and basically somebody put a lot of thought into that. So, how to do this, right? Again, falling back on my predecessor, collaborate. There is no other way than to kind of push yourselves into the room, put the foot in the door, and say, no, we are also here, right? We are not sitting in the basement. We are actually live people. We breathe, we write, we understand, and we know probably much more about the users than you do. So collaborate with the product managers, product owners, right? Sometimes, I don't know if you know the difference, I can tell you later on, but collaborate with both of those groups. they all need to somehow get involved. They are also quite often quite busy, or they think they are busy, so somehow find a way to talk to them. Add yourself to the team, right? How you add yourself to the team? Oh, obviously, you can meet people over coffee, I don't know, some kind of a event. But for example, join the demo, right? If there is an agile, if this is a true agile and true Scrum, there has to be a review or a demo. Make yourself part of that, right? Say what you think. Show your content if you already have it. If you don't do this, if you don't be persistent and also with some level of assertion, don't put yourself there, this will never go, right? This will be fun. Insist on extending vision and strategy. So go to your product, I hope you have some product managers, product owners. Go to them and ask them if they have a vision and a strategy for the product that you are working on. Hopefully most of them will say yes. They will show you something. I guarantee you that most of it will not even have a word about content and user experience. It will talk only about the marketing, competition, and the sometimes about user, right? But not that often, honestly. Join the UX team, right? Or extend the UX team. Actually, UX is not the same thing as content creation, right? Join that team because they were very effective over the last couple of years to throw themselves into the team and sometimes even take over the creative part of the product, of the product creation and process. So join them, extend that team. Why? Because those guys also need to be educated a little bit about the importance of not only designing great flows, but also providing the right information with that flows as the user goes through this one. Smaller things. Teams usually have backlogs. They have epics, they have lower level stories. Make sure that entry and exit criteria contain content, expectations. And that content is described from the perspective of who will actually use this product and how. So if they are writing stories, they should also write how the user will use that functionality, right? And how he will know about this functionality. Because quite often, if the product is very complex, has lots of features, there is no way that the user will just know it. And education. I wouldn't call myself an educated person on content, even though I have lots of friends who know a great deal about this. Maybe because I'm lazy or I have no time to do this. But make sure that the product management, the groups that are out there are educated basically on how your process works, when you are providing that content, how you are doing this, what works best, right? And also what capabilities are out there. Because you know about the technologies probably better, what is possible, what is not possible, than any of them, and they will never, ever look into this one, unless they are product managers for content management system. Other than that, I don't think they will ever look at this. All right, so kind of that's it. So last thing, what's keeping you from going to lunch? A product manager and his story. So thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Any questions? I will be also around on the venue for some time if you want to talk. If you want to complain or criticize, here is my LinkedIn profile. Be honest, I am a product manager, so I don't mind because I will never read it. So.
Okay, right. Do we have any questions? Sorry, there is one question there in the middle.
Okay. Right. So the first question, if I understand this correctly, how does this happen that the people are losing the reading skills, right? And what to do with this, right? Especially that it seems like, especially the people who are working either in content or support, providing lots of effort there. But people are basically, and I will have to say it, okay, you may disagree with this, the people are lazy, and most of the inventions in the world come from the fact that the people are lazy. So the only way to deal with this is to give them the content as they're expecting, right? So that means that you cannot write big procedures, you actually need to show them, right? Do like a feature simulation. And have also very short content to share with them. If they are asking you a question on the support channel, don't waste time explaining that to them. They will forget this in 15 seconds. Just give them the link to, but very dedicated, specific procedure or solution that solves that. So that was the thing that we were trying in a couple of products. When the customers were repeatedly calling for the same procedure, we actually didn't do the RTMF, actually RTFM. We were actually recording, we were putting somebody on the spot, recording basically how they would click on the feature, and we were sending them on the internal streaming to teach them basically how to do it. And I have a great story about this, but maybe later. And the second thing, it should be not possible anymore to only talk about the big features in the marketing materials. Because if you are delivering your product constantly, right, if there is a continuous delivery every 2 weeks, month or something, the customers, if there is a large amount of customers, the customers will ask about small things. What is the improvement made? How do I use it, right? Now your content becomes very small and very specific, very directed. And try to teach your teams to do a pipeline-based, right? A pipeline means that every time that something is released, this is also released with this. Pipeline-based release notes, but not just the bullet points, as usually marketing would do, but bullet points with a small kind of a description of every feature that was made. Pictures, things like that. There are plenty nice technologies to do this, especially if the product is web-based, right? Again, something that worked very well with one of the customers. And again, there is an anecdote for that, but we don't have time for it. Anybody else?
Yeah, I think we have time for one more question, so Pavel.
Oh yeah, this works, great. Thanks, awesome talk. Really appreciate the product manager's perspective. And I absolutely agree. The road to better content is through collaboration. I do have one question, however. As a writer, your performance is often gauged on the docs you've written and not necessarily the evangelical work that you're doing. Although it is absolutely necessary, it is very abstract and intangible. So oftentimes you're faced with a dilemma. I either work on integrating myself with the team better, or I deliver the docs that are expected from me because that's what my performance is, well, gauged on. So how would you go about quantifying that effort that goes into actually integrating yourself with the team and, just improving collaboration?
Yes, so that comes from the cross-functional teams. And actually experience of introducing the cross-functional teams to the very homogeneous engineering groups that were just working on the technical aspects code. They don't want it to be concerned with anything else. Entry and exit criteria. So that's the first thing. And second thing, the stories cannot only talk about the code that the people are writing. They need to talk about the user experience. They need to talk about content that will be created. And they need to talk about basically everything else what is necessary to build a product. So now, if you have a cross-functional team, you also need to have a cross-functional backlog. And that whole backlog needs to go into one sprint. Now, the execution on that sprint, right? The execution on that sprint tracks basically how much the team did, right? What was the actual output? And it's not only code, it's not only tests, it's everything else that basically is necessary to deliver the product to the customer and to be a successful product. To do that, you need to have in every story a product owner who is capable of writing the entry and exit criteria for a given context. If this is a code, it has to talk about the functionality of what that code needs to be done, right? Maybe some non-functional requirements. If this is a content, it needs to say what will be entry and what will be the output, right? How the output will look like. Whether this will be a part of document, right? If this is in a classical approach. Or maybe this will be a kind of something integrated with the feature, like a tooltip that will pop up showing a very quick procedure or a couple of steps how to go through this. But slicing your big documents into those small pieces and putting them into the backlog, I think this worked for me best, right? With over the years with the teams. I think this was also eventually after some rebellion from the engineering guys. This was which was handled with force. This also worked well, right? They understood why they need it, and they appreciated the fact that there is somebody who tells them that this code can be. They don't need to write those old things into the code because it's enough, right? Because it does the job. Okay.
Okay, I believe that's the amount of time we have for questions. Thank you, Andrzej, for your presentation.
Thank you. Enjoy your lunch.